These are examples of guys that immediately become difference makers on your roster, and you don't have a roster filled with a ton of difference makers.
Dennis Allen was Trey Hendrickson's defensive coordinator in New Orleans.
Yeah, I was talking with Tyler, too. This is, again, I'm having that same Spider-Man conversation with myself. I've been more than willing to consider trading for Myles Garrett because I think he's the best defensive player in the league the last couple of years. Trey Hendrickson led the league not just in sacks last year, but pressures. In the last 4 years with the Bengals, he's had 57 sacks in 4 years. He's only a year older than Myles Garrett. And I don't know why I am personally more willing to trade for Myles Garrett than I am Trey Hendrickson. Maybe I should be more open-minded to that. And by the way, again, Dennis Allen, he was with Dennis Allen all 4 years in New Orleans. He was there from 17 to 20.
He had him as a rookie, right?
Had him as a rookie, but he was more of a late bloomer. In his first 3 years with New Orleans, he only had a total of 6.5 sacks. His final year in New Orleans, he had 13.5. So maybe New Orleans lets him go as a free agent because they think could have been a flash in the pan. Was not. Played his best football in Cincinnati the last 4 years where he's had 57 sacks.
That's incredible, 57 sacks. Bleacher Nation Bears, who I like a lot, they sent out this. Would you rather see the Bears trade for Trey Hendrickson or sign Khalil Mack? So you get Khalil Mack, who's older, on a cheaper deal, who he would want to come here, and maybe you sign him 2 years, $25 million at 34 years old, and you don't have to give up any pick, and then you can still draft another. Like, my plan would have been, hey, you've got Sweat under the big contract. You sign Khalil Mack at the older guy contract, which isn't a lot, and you don't give up a pick, and then you draft an edge at 10.
Yeah, you could sell me on that for sure.
Or would you rather trade Trey Hendrickson and then have to pay him a whole bunch of money? So it's an an interesting thought exercise there.
Can you ensure or guarantee me that the pick they use, this guy's going to be somebody that they haven't been able to find in the draft?
And it's like what I was telling you. You played with Alonzo Spellman.
Yeah.
Alonzo Spellman was very highly thought of when they drafted him in the mid-'90s. Never turned out.
Nope.
When I got on the beat, the Bears were chasing. Jim Flanagan, remember, left. He was more of a D-tackle. Then he went to D-end a little bit. And then they went and they couldn't find anybody, and they end up signing then Phillip Daniels in free agency. Remember, you force it and you get a guy who is good, not great, but you spend a lot of money on. And then again, then that's when they traded down from like the number, 4 overall pick in the Rex Grossman draft, and you pick Michael Haynes, who was supposed to be a good edge out of Penn State.
Remember what he was most known for?
The exotic animals.
Yes.
He had like snakes and lizards.
Yeah.
I was on that beat then, doing all those side stories. Michael Haynes likes exotic animals.
Yeah. Can't sack a quarterback, but he likes snakes and lizards.
But what the Bears would like most is exotic sack numbers. Yeah. So he's then no good. And then it forces Jerry Angelo to have to trade Marty Booker out of Waddle Silvy. So then they bring in Silvy as the opposite of Alex Brown. Then after that peters out, you're trying to draft, and then you have to go all in on Julius Peppers. So it's always
he was a
chasing.
monster. He was good.
He was good.
Yeah.
You always have to chase, and you fail on drafting these guys, and then the same thing happens ultimately when you go after Khalil Mack, because you've never really had a homegrown guy, and that's why you got to trade the 2 first-round picks.
Listen, the reason why I even entertain these thoughts, and some people, I get the concept of we need to use our draft picks and build through the draft. I get all of that. These are examples of guys that immediately become difference makers on your roster, and you don't have a roster filled with a ton of difference makers.
It's a known quantity, and it takes the guesswork out of number 10.
Yes.
Because it could be a flop.
It's why I'm more willing to consider it. I'm not going to, berate you for suggesting in any way, shape, or form that the best thing to do is use these picks on offensive and defensive linemen. That is a totally acceptable path for me as well. I don't know why, but I'm a little more interested in considering trading for guys like Hendrickson and especially Garrett. And I should be more interested in Hendrickson than I probably am for reasons I don't know.
I'll play the Rossini before we go to Potsy. But when you acquire Trey Hendrickson, when you acquire Joe Thuney, you're acquiring all-pro players.
Yes.
You're acquiring Myles Garrett. You're acquiring one of the best players in the league. These aren't just guys that you're acquiring who are good or very good. You're acquiring two of the best players in the league.
At very important positions.
Yes.
And that's why.
So there's a difference.
Yeah, I mean, if this was the best middle linebacker in football, I would value it differently. Trey Hendrickson or Myles Garrett. If Myles Garrett is the best defensive player in the game, and you bring him in, and Joe Thuney is the best guard in the game, you've got two of the best players in the NFL at two important positions. So that's why I at least consider it.
Yes. As Thayer pointed out yesterday, the last two All-Pros they've had on their line were Olin Kreutz and was it Hilge or Cover? It was Cover.
Yeah.
It was Cover and Olin. Those are the only two All-Pros they've had up front in their last 40 years.
The three of them.
And now they acquired Thuney, who's their third.
Yes.
That's how good of a player he is.
The three of them. There was Olin, there was Jay, and then there was Jimbo. So
he's a fourth.
Thuney's the fourth.
But that's still, think about how rare that is for the Bears to get one, and they traded a fourth-round pick for one. So that's why Myles Garrett, too, or even Hendrickson,
Again,
I'd be
like you said, your
to.
term. I'm not pounding the table for it, but my brain is open to it.
I wouldn't complain about acquiring Trey Hendrickson.